want to write anything, write down the side. Hello, says Jerry. Please feel free. I don't know how many are coming in today. We've got like 300 possibilities. So that'd be mental if that happens, but I doubt that greatly. It rarely happens. So I'll just wait for a few people to come in and then we'll see where we go. Hope everyone's all right. Hope people are well. How have you been? I hope that you have been feeling good. Hi, Jim from Cornwall. Nice to see you and the girls. Hope you're well. Hope things are good. We're going to be talking about trust today. So it's quite an interesting one. We'll see where it goes. Hopefully we won't have 300 trolls in like we've had before. And hopefully we won't have any wankers. Been known. Definitely been known. So I hope not. I'm still not 100%, so I really apologise if I sound a bit croaky or I cough or anything else as well. So hopefully that'll all start to disappear fairly soon in some way, shape or form. So we'll just see who comes in and then we'll go through the rules for the room and the basics, please. The things like, you know, please keep your clothes on, basics, please.
Oh, God. Did you see that message?
What message?
Olga, who is... Caris can't post to everyone. Apparently she can only send messages to me or Debs, okay, which is fair enough, but does that mean that people have to type directly to you?
No, I'll change it. It's now to everyone. Have a go, see if that works. I've changed it, so hopefully that works. So I've changed it to everyone, so that should be all right. But please don't send private messages to anybody. It's just really basic respect. This isn't a therapy room, but it's also not a pickup joint. You're not here to pick someone up, to try and do anything. We're here to kind of share and learn. So that's good. So no, I didn't see that message. So hi, Caris, nice to see you. Hi, Kitten, nice to see you too. And Kinky Smiley Kitty, sorry, they're only going privately. That's sorted now. Good morning, Lilith. Good morning. Yeah, you're very welcome for the name check. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And hello, Sanride. Hello, Cinders. I hope I am slowly feeling better. I'm still not right, but I'm getting there very slowly but surely. So hopefully everyone can write to everyone now. But I have made sure that people can't unmute and stuff like that. So if we get some bad messages, Jerry will start to chuck people out and then we'll see where we go.
I'll do me bleeding best, yeah.
Do me bleeding best. Absolutely.
I seem very pale.
What you do?
Yeah, in my videos, she seems very pale.
Maybe it's just your whole thing.
Yeah, maybe
7:30 p.m. So where are you from, Sanride, then? Hi, Ruby. Nice to see you. Just see if a few people are still coming in and then we'll take it from there. So we're going to be talking about trust today, and this is being recorded as always. So please remember that it is recorded. So, you know, whatever you write, say, see, or anything else as well, it is being recorded. It does go out on YouTube and they do get quite a few hits. So please make sure that you have the right name up for yourself, that you feel happy about who you are here and everything else as well. And amazing, it just comes from FetLife, really. I don't advertise anywhere else to do any of this. Luli says, hello, 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 Ruby Red Rabbit. Hi, Damaged Girl. Hello, the Subby Union. And Lisa says hello to everyone as well. So today we're talking about trust. So let's just go through the rules again, please. No direct messaging just to one person. No nudity. Please keep dressed. If you've got a question, please write it on the side. I've made sure that people can't unmute themselves. The YouTube only shows the speaker. Yeah, and I've made sure that actually someone else can't speak now apart from Jerry. So hopefully that'll work. I'm learning slowly as I go.
I've got the power.
I've got the power. That was terrible. So that helps as well. So we're going to be talking about trust, and I'm going to be talking about trust from a normal perspective, as in normal relationships, vanilla relationships. I'm going to be talking a little bit about polyamory, although, do you know, it's a bit of a fallacy to say it's any different. Trust is trust. And I'm going to be talking about BDSM. Again, trust is trust. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the science of trust, how it works in our brain, what happens, the history, and how we develop trust, and what happens, and some theories around it as well. So hopefully we'll cover a bit of everything. I've already had a couple of questions about trust as well. So people have asked, what about in this scenario? So as we get to the last half hour, you know me, I prattle on for ages, so maybe not. So as we get to the last half hour, I might turn around and end up saying, oh shit, have we got any questions? And I know I already have one, so that's already there. So who believes they're good at trust here? Like, who believes they understand what trust is? What does it mean to you? That's what I'm curious about, first of all, because I suppose I've got a very different philosophy on trust to a lot of people. Okay, so Satine says it's about open communication. Okay, Yes, DS is based on it. So for you, Roy, a power exchange relationship has to have trust. It's based on it, but isn't every relationship based on trust? If you don't have trust, what do you have? So again, I think we have to watch it, especially on the scene. If we turn and say we are exclusively different or better, open communication isn't enough in my experience. Why not, Lilith? Why not, Lady Liv? So if you've got open communication, why isn't that enough? What else does one need in order to make trust work? Belief in the person you are belief in the person you are with, to be honest. So just belief in the other person. What about belief in yourself as well? Honest communication. See, there's that word, isn't it? Communication. What the fuck does communication mean? We all think we're brilliant at it. We all think we're clear. We all think we're really clever at these things. And actually, we're often not. And Naomi says the success of all relationships is based on trust. I'm going to disagree with that, funny enough. I think it's part of a relationship, but I don't think it's all about it. Realistic expectations. Yeah, that's a good phrase, isn't it? What does realistic mean? Leaving past problems in the past to be able to trust, says Lisa. Yeah, we all bring our shit with us, don't we? And Rachel says connection and mutual respect. And Lady Lida says because one can say they are okay with something when originally communicated with, and then not to be when it happens. Totally agree with that. Very different. And also something else somebody said, some things I give trust until someone breaks it. Other things trust needs to be built on before I can give it. Cosmopolite says 100%. And Roy says, I think successful relationships are based on trust. Okay. And Ruby says what we say and what we do aligns. Oh, that's a really important one, isn't it? That one really matters. So trust is quite interesting, isn't it? It is a central part of all our relationships. It really is. And Poppy says, consistent integrity, both sides, transparent core values, safe to be vulnerable. Yeah, very much so. Naomi says, trust the person. Safi says, someone reliable and consistent over time. Naomi says, to do what? Yeah, good question, isn't it? Lisa, opening up with how you're feeling, honestly. I used to, on my old, one of my old handles used to be, my honesty can hide my truth. And I think that's something you have to think about as well. A lot of us think that we are honest. A lot of us think that other people are honest. A lot of us really think that, you know, someone's going to carry through. We have our morals and our values, and we think that somebody else's matches up, and actually they don't often. And Naomi says, I trust most people to do what they do. Cosmopolite, having a regulated nervous system also plays a role. If you don't, you might not be able to trust your instincts. Totally agree. So if you have a history where your sympathetic nervous system maybe hasn't responded the best over the years because it's tried to save you too many times and you've had some form of trauma, then trust might be impacted by that, the same as our systems, our beliefs, our values, how we've been brought up and what that means. Especially if we don't believe ourselves, that you sort of say there as well. Naomi, I trust my husband to care for me, but I don't trust him to remember some stuff. Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? And Tracy Ann says it's hard to describe. It's a sort of underlying feeling. And that feeling always starts with ourselves, because trust comes in so many forms. It can be about romance. It can be about business. It can be about politics. It can be about finances. It can be about all sorts of different things. It's about other people and situations and relationships that we have with things and people around us. Reverend Tooley says, when I learned to drive a car, I learned that I also have to trust other drivers, that they follow the same rules and stay in their own lane, and that we don't communicate but still have to trust. Yeah, to a certain extent, we do have to trust what's going on in the world and the people around us, don't we? So it makes a difference. So what do some people say trust is? For some people, it's a set of behaviors. It's a set of actions that people have. For others, it's a probability. It's a bet that on average, most people will behave this way most of the time. For some people, it's about dependability. What's that person going to do? Sandride says trust is similar to freedom of choice. Yeah, but it's trusting that people will behave in a certain way. Trust can be a feeling that we turn around. Oh, Jerry, that's a fucking awful joke. Trust is a feeling of confidence and a security that somebody cares, or that somebody has our best interest at heart. Or is it about our emotions? And trust is a trader at Lamb. There is a trader called Trust at London Alternative Market. So what we're looking for is behavior, expressions, and different things. So someone treats you well or says something nice, that's nice. And it feels nice. Gosh, you're really lovely. I love the look of you. Aren't you fantastic? All of those things. But they're just those words are just a little bit of evidence in a moment about that person's internal state of mind, about what they're thinking and feeling. Can we trust what that person is going to do or follow through with is a completely different thing. And we have to look at possibility. So trust actually can be quite mathematical. I'm going to look at the Gottmans later and his research. He has a fantastic book on trust that I would really recommend. It's all about the science of trust. And he's actually worked out proper formulae that can determine and tell you whether a relationship is going to survive, whether it's going to do well, and what the likelihood of it surviving over a period of time is. And it's quite shocking because his results are so high if you study any of the Gottman methods. What was the book again? I will come back to it later, I promise. It's by Gottman, but it's about the science of trust, but I will cover it later. So it's called The Science of Trust. I think it's called Emotional Attunement for Couples. I think that's the secondary part of it. It's by Gottman. And he just looked into what is the science of trust and what does that look at. So some people say that trust is an attitude. Some people will say that humans have to trust more than anybody else. Out of all the animals and mammals, different things that there are in the world, human beings have the most difficulty surviving without anybody else. So a baby, a child is totally helpless. Lots of different things that are born aren't as helpless. They can walk fairly quickly. They can feed themselves. Human beings cannot. So we have to work with trust. We have to be able to survive. And of course, a lot of human beings break that trust. Lots of people are abused. Lots of people have a really hard life. Lots of people learn not to rely on other human beings because they're not very good. And then that comes into other theories like attachment theory and different things that we can look at as we go on as well. So it's probably more behavioral, probably more around philosophy, probably more around probability. Trust comes into those. Andy says, howdy folks, hope everyone is okay. Literally just through the door, workshop on, whiskey poured and relax. Welcome, Andy, nice to see you because I haven't been around for a few weeks. So the problem is that trust is a form of neural pattern, and it's based on a pattern that we have from our experience, from our caregivers, from how we're brought up and what happens. So actually, I think as somebody said earlier, I might be able to trust you that you're going to buy me the right fruit I like, but can I trust you not to cheat? I might be able to trust you not to cheat, but you might not remember what milk I like. So we can trust on various levels in really, really different ways. And that's something else that comes in because some people aren't very good at the basics, remembering what perfume you wear or remembering what size trousers you have or shoes. Like, fuck, sorry, bought the wrong ones. But they're really reliable when it comes to fidelity, let's say, or communication. So we're all very, very different. And trust is also massively influenced by culture, by gender and different things as well, about expectations that society have put on people. So that makes a real difference as well. Complete trust is rare. That absolute trust, that person will have my back no matter what. I remember when my third eldest daughter was really tiny, I'd have given you the keys to one of my first houses to say, oh no, she'd never cut her hair. She loves her hair. And actually one day found her having chopped some of her hair off. And it was such a shock. I'd have said, no, she would never do that. That person wouldn't do that. And we can get really shocked sometimes at some of the things that people do. So we have to think about, in order to trust someone, we have to feel good about them. We have to know them and we have to understand what they do. So Lilith says, my mum is the only person I trust completely. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because what do we mean by complete trust? To always do what's good for you? Because sometimes trust comes into the aspect of, I want you to do what I want you to do, not necessarily what's good for me, or that the person knows you and says the right thing. That makes a difference as well. So we have to be, it's interesting when it starts to come about trust. Mistrust is different, isn't it? It's something we've been brought up with in our way, where somebody doesn't do or doesn't follow through, as Lady Lilith says there. Somebody doesn't follow through what they're saying. Somebody doesn't do what they're going to say, or that somebody doesn't lets us down or abuses or hurts us. And actually, most of us have some kind of history of being let down, being lied to. It's part of life. Interesting. My mum is the person I trust the least, says Kelly. Yes. And that would be something I would say quite naturally next. Our parents are people we either really trust or we really don't. And that comes into it too. So we have to look at what is it we've had in our past. What's our attachment patterns and theories like? So we have to look at that. And it's a bad feeling, isn't it? It's an instinct. Oh, I'm not sure that person doesn't follow through, judging on their history. However, we do something called projection. So when we meet somebody new, if they remind us of somebody old, or we're not sure about them, or they say things slightly in the wrong way, we're like, damn, you remind me of that person and I ain't trusting you at all. And we project sometimes as to who we can trust and why we can and what that means. Damaged Girl says, sorry, to go back, somebody said privately, what confuses me is when someone says they do not trust you when you did exactly what you said you would. Sometimes it isn't personal. Sometimes people do not trust. It isn't about what you said and what you did. It's also about values, morals, and different things aligning in a moment. That makes a difference as well. Is it important, Damaged Girl says, to fully trust our own selves before we trust someone else? I think what you've got to do is trust that you'll be okay. I have a very strong philosophy in life that if you cheat on me, if you do things that aren't particularly pleasant, if you're not very nice to me, that is a you problem. It's not a me problem. And if that's a you problem, you need to go off and do your own shit. That's just tough. You go and do that. That's okay. I trust that I will be okay. I trust that I will manage. I might be really sad. I might feel a bit down for a while. I might be angry about something, but after a while, what the difference will be is that, nah, fuck that. I'm all right. And I know I can pull through because I like myself, I rely on myself, and I know that I can trust myself to manage these things, and I put things into place that are good for me. So another person said directly, I just thought of the statement, trust you to do that. Does that not define trust as just an expectation? But trust is an expectation, is it? It's an expectation that you will do what you were saying, that you will follow through, that you will be there for someone, and that somehow, and the most disappointing thing in most relationships is expectations. How many of you have turned around and had an expectation about somebody or about something and felt utterly let down? And it's always down to our own expectations and what we bring into that our assumptions that we make, that we think, yeah, I've got that assumption and that's the way it is. So expectations are hugely related to trust. They really are. So mistrusting someone is about many things. Let's talk about a few things that it's actually related to and what trust means. One of the first things we have to think of is consistency when we come into trust. So that person says exactly, they don't trust me because I didn't do what they wanted me to do despite the communication. Some of us just don't want to listen. Some of us don't want to hear the truth. It's amazing when we are listening to people, how we filter what we're hearing and how we filter what we're saying even, because that's what I want you to hear rather than actually that's not truthful. That's not real about me. So one of the first things we have to think about is being true to our word. We have to keep in mind that it is about keeping promises, but not making promises you can't actually keep. So there are two aspects to that. I promise you I'll always do this. I promise you that we make these wild promises when we first meet someone. And as we go on, especially as all our lust and attachment and love is getting in the way. And Andy says, sometimes people only hear what they want to hear. And some people also only say what they think somebody else wants to hear as well. So it's really hard to say the truth for us sometimes. So trust from that perspective is two aspects. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm a big believer in under-promise and over-deliver rather than over-promising and under-delivering. So people just feel disappointed. And when people are disappointed, it's a terribly British way of saying, I expected you to do this, you did this, I'm fucked off about that difference and I'm really sad. British people just go, I'm terribly disappointed, rather than, you twat, why did you do that? I think I promised someone I won't get angry with them, which is ridiculous. Absolutely. I can promise I might get angry. I can promise I maybe won't walk out. I can promise I won't scream and shout and call you every name under the sun. But I know I am going to get angry and I know I'm going to react in a certain way. That's okay. It's about making sure you keep your word in a way. And the more you keep your word and the more you don't make over promises, the more somebody can develop trust with you, because it is a process and that does make a difference. Poor communication is really interesting. Effective communication is really interesting. We can't promise emotions in advance. Oh, no, that's interesting. I can, Cosmopolite. I can't promise that I won't be angry, but I can promise I'm not going to call you a cunt or lash out at you or be vicious. So the difference between actions is very different to emotions. I might be really angry, but I'm not going to punch you. I might feel really sad, but I know I'm not going to walk out. And if I need some space, I know what I'm going to do is negotiate saying, I need 5 minutes. Can I just grab 5 minutes and I'll be back? Or can we please talk about this tomorrow because it's too much for me right now? So I think we can promise the way we'll act around emotions. We can't promise the emotions themselves. Okay, so you agree. So that's good. So effective communication is really important. It's about clarity. It's about defining what's agreed upon. When I meet polycules, or I see couples, or I see people who are exploring BDSM or DS or power exchange relationships, or couples who are terribly vanilla, what most of the problems are most of the time is they haven't fucking sorted out what they meant. So what do you mean? I really believe in caring for someone. What does that mean? Well, you know, care. No, I don't know. I know what the dictionary says. I know what I mean by care. What do you mean by care? And it's really interesting to try and make sure that we have to have the same goals. And it takes lots and lots of conversation and communication to make sure that that happens. Of course, with that, you've also got to take risk. As Pat says, easy to do, yeah, in theory. So we have to be able to take risk. So we need effective communication, clear communication. And we need to just double check. Can I just check what you said? Can I check what I think I heard? One of the favorite things is with my kids growing up was, can I check that with you? Because I feel like I've been clear, but hey, sometimes these things get lost. So what did I ask you to do? You told me to tidy my bedroom by Sunday. No, I asked you to take the shit out of your room by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Completely different. So we really need to double check that sometimes. Can I check it with you? Somebody direct message for me, particularly in this context, if trust is to do with not causing harm. I think, but I don't think you can ever promise not to do harm. I think that's an impossible setup. I don't necessarily know what's going to harm you. I don't necessarily know what is going to hurt you. And I might not mean harm. My intent might be nice, sweet, good, pure, whatever fucking word you want to put in there that makes you angelic. I don't intend harm, but I didn't know that that would cause you harm. And we all talk about things like, oh, no, I don't want to lie. Oh, Jesus Christ. Most people lie about 6 times a day. Most people lie. Most people use filters and change the way they are and change the way things are. So that's really difficult. Andy says, yeah, I think when people are under stress or pressure, what is said from one person gets interpreted into you promised, or even misunderstood. You said that. No, I didn't. That's not what I meant. Well, then we should have fucking well checked at the time, shouldn't we? It's quite simple, but it's not. And I think when things are said in heat, it's really difficult. You can promise not to do it intentionally. Yes, I will never mean to hurt you. If I do, please inform me, let me know, and then let's discuss it is really important. I think as well, what people forget is we live in such an instant society. We want it all, oh, I can trust you. It's delivered. But actually it takes time. It's a small commitment that we have every day. Believe it or not, even presidents and prime ministers lie. No, you can afford 41,000 for Winchester. Yeah, let's not go there. Tracy Ann says, I also feel sometimes people interpret being hurt by someone as a breach of trust when often it's nothing to do with trust. That is a fucking awesome point, Tracy Ann. I can't tell you how much I agree with you on that one. It drives me nuts. You've broken my trust because you hurt me. No, I've hurt you. They're very, very different things. Completely different things. And it isn't about trust, because often it's about listening or clarity as well. So I really agree. It's to do with the misunderstanding or changing priorities and changing in life, but you haven't communicated it. You haven't kept it up. And that makes such a difference too. Cinders, who knew? I know, right? Politics. Who would do that? I never knew that, Jerry, says Andy. So trust is always about risk. And we say things often when we start to fall in love with someone, or we start to lust after someone, and we develop like a very quick attachment maybe that comes up. And that's one of the beginnings of trust. We'll often say things like, oh yeah, no, there's this and there's this. And oh my God, isn't that cool? We get on so well. This is so similar. Isn't that great? And yeah, but actually it's got nothing to do with trust. It's to do with the fact that we are trying to pull that person in, which is a very normal thing to do when we're trying to develop a relationship and we're trying to create a connection. And that's really different to developing trust. If we expect too much too soon, it's about a foundation. It's about building and growing, and that matters too. And I think it's really important not to say yes or no immediately. Do you want to do that? Yes. Yep. Actually, you might not. It's really good, and it's a good idea to give people time. Let me just have a think about that. Yeah, weigh up the pros and cons. So only make the commitments that you can do. No is a really important word in a relationship. People don't use it often enough. No, I don't want to do that. No, that isn't okay by me. Not selfishly. No one has to be a prick. No one has to be hideous to anyone else as well. But you are going to disappoint someone. So you're better off disappointing up front rather than trying to pretend to be something you're not. And that helps develop trust. Be clear, like being organized and structured and knowing what you've got in your diary and being able to commit or not commit or say what you can and can't do is really important. I'm going up to see Poppy tomorrow. Can't wait. I'm so excited. I know what's booked for the weekend. We've got time together. She's best friend. Can't wait to go and see her. It really matters to me. And I've told her I don't really know what time I'm going to get there, but I know I'm leaving around, I think it's 1. So, and she's very clearly said, that's okay. I'll be home from then. She'll be okay. I haven't said I will definitely be there by 5 because I don't know, because I can't predict the traffic and I don't know what's going to happen. So even those stupid little things are really important. So you have to work out trust and respect by clarity. And you have to show that that's there. I think as well, another thing that's really important is honesty. It's a truth. What's a lie? What isn't? What is your honesty? But I think a lot of us believe our own hype. A lot of us believe our own stories. A lot of us want to put something across that says, yeah, I'm this kind of person. But as soon as you tell a lie, as soon as someone finds out, that trust is so broken. And trust is so difficult to build back up after it's been broken. So it's really important to go in small, again, under promise, over deliver, makes a real difference. If you show that you're kind, one of the ways we learn to trust people is watching them with other human beings. If you go in and you've got somebody serving you and you treat them like a piece of shit, that person isn't going to trust you as much. If you're rude to that person, if you don't show respect to other people, all of these things help build trust. They make a real difference. The same as our honesty with our own feelings. I don't know. I know that you care. What does that look like? People, yes, exactly, cosmopolite. So what is your definition of honesty? That's a really difficult one, isn't it? Again, that takes really good conversations. And I'll refer to the Gottmans later because it makes such a difference, because we need emotional intelligence around all of this. And a lot of people aren't taught emotional intelligence, don't have any. Honesty equals true, but true to who? Is it true to you, or is it something you can prove in court? Is it something you can prove in a biology lab? Because that's a fact, isn't it? I might be really honest with my feelings. I might say, I love you. I love you. Might be really honest in that moment. And it is true. Use it on your resume at all times, because honestly, it's really, so truth. Yes. So exactly. Truth and fact aren't the same. So, and your truth might, I agree with you, Satine. It might not be the other person's truth. I love you. You might interpret that as, oh, that's great. You love me. We can stay together. Our life is really good. That's lovely. But I love you does not a relationship maketh. It does not. There are other things that have to come into it that make a real difference. So we have these perceptions around our own reality that state this is what's going to happen. Subjective versus objective. And that takes us back to just going in and finding out what the other person meant by that. I love you. And I love you too. Really important, maybe. What does that mean? What sort of love? What is that a promise? Isn't it a promise? I promise I'll never leave you. Do you know what? That's when you're going to break, unless you die last. People leave. A marriage, even if you've got a monogamous marriage with 2 people, one person is going to leave at some point because they're going to die. People leave, people go, things change. What if they get dementia? What if they're really not well? It's a form of leaving, isn't it? You can't always stay. We make these crazy promises that say, this is going to be, and then we self-promote these promises that really cause a lot of damage to us as well. John says it's possible to be honest, but not truthful. Yeah, and it's promised to be truthful and not honest. As long as I feel you want to be with me and I feel you want to be with me, that's a relationship. So that it's the wanting to. I like, rather than saying I love you or I want you or I need you, what I really love in a relationship is every day when you say, I choose you, I choose us today, I choose to work on us, I choose to be with you, and I choose to commit to that. I really like that. It can make a real difference. So Morgan says, being demisexual, my priorities are honestly intellect, and an added perk would be a sense of humor. If these components aren't the foundation of our friendship relationship, it's difficult to continue. So demisexual for you is about the connection rather than just the physical, rather than sex, and just it's all about the connection in some way, shape or form. And Andy says dementia, the long goodbye. Yeah, because it is, isn't it? We tend to disappear. We disappear. I think as well, it's something about doing what you always believe is right. But right is such, again, a personal word, isn't it? The right and wrong of things. There's our core values. If you don't know your own core values, it's very difficult to trust yourself or somebody else. I've got a writing on FetLife about values. It's really important to work out your values. If you don't live a life true to your values, it's really difficult to trust yourself or others because you're not living your life true to yourself. It might mean that money is really important to you. It might mean that relationships are really important to you. It might mean that family is really important to you. That there are so many things that can be important to us in different ways, shape or form. And which ones are important and why, you have to be very true to your values. And if you are true to your values and your beliefs, then you build trust better. And because I don't want to do that. That's not true to my values. That would be really awful if I did that. It doesn't matter. Let's just slip out. They haven't noticed that we haven't paid. No, that's not right for me. I don't want to do that. So it's really important that you learn to trust yourself through that and know when you make mistakes. I remember being in a shop many, many years ago, and I was looking at 2 cameras, and one was a lot more expensive than the other. It was for a birthday present a Christmas present for my second eldest. And the guy put them in the wrong box. And I said to him, "You put them in the wrong box?" And he said, "Don't tell me what I've done, love." No, that got my back up a little bit. Do you think? Fucking hell. That got my back up a little bit. Okay, I'm not your love, and you have put them in the wrong box. And he said, "I think I know what box I put them in." And I said, "Okay, I'm being really clear to you. If I buy this box here, I'm buying the £700 camera instead of the £400 camera, but it's in the wrong box." And he just rolled his eyes at me, and I said, "Okay, thank you very much. I'll have that one." And I definitely bought the more expensive camera. Like, he just didn't want to listen to me. So it's really interesting when people are really convinced that they're right. It's really difficult. John says, one way to be truthful is to only say things from your own perspective. But it's important to even say that, isn't it? From my perspective, I think, I experience, I believe, and to be open to being wrong. I'll have a look at that writing, Debs. I go through phases as do many, wondering why I'm here, what my purpose to myself or others. Sometimes we don't have all the answers ourselves. No, and that's why we end up going for therapy or having good family or friends that we speak to, or trying to find out who we are. And that's really important. But being true to your values is really fundamental. If you just project perfection and say, "Here I am, I'm wonderful," and you can't look at your own faults, then Jesus Christ, you're not going to do well, are you? It's just not going to go well. So trust creates an intimacy. It's an intimacy that's really important. And children grow up with that reputation. So children naturally lie at some point. We need to catch children out. Children often naturally steal. Children test boundaries and see where they fit and what that looks like. The idea is that we catch them out and we have a look at what that means. And it's really important as a parent that we have follow through. Being a parent isn't about being a friend. Being a parent is about consequences. Again, if you do that again, I'm going to flush your fucking head down the toilet, is not a good threat, because it's not one you're going to see through, because you might kill your child. Or if you've permanently I was seeing a child quite a while ago as a client, and the amount of times the parents would say, "Seriously, do I have to get you adopted?" Well, no, you're not going to, are you? If we keep making threats that we don't follow through on, then that's not good for us either. That makes a real difference. And Pat says, your own perspective only works if you really know yourself. Lots don't. I really agree with that, Pat. You have to learn about yourself. Also, kids aren't silly. Kids can often tell who's telling the truth and who's trustworthy and who isn't. And of course, that's also down to attachment as well. So we have to be able to survive. So we've always looked for that boy crying wolf. It's a very famous story, isn't it? Peter and the wolf. We have to know who can we trust in our village, who is going to be there for us, who isn't going to be there for us. And sometimes people can cry wolf for a really long time. And then we find out after that, actually, when it really matters, then it's not so good. I think death is one of the biggest tellers of who you can trust. All of a sudden, when there's a will involved and there's property or money or a certain thing, a ring that both people wanted, all of a sudden everything can implode in relationships at that point. It can also happen over a divorce or a breakup, when people get very selfish, very greedy, and change. And that's when we really see someone's true colors coming through sometimes. So it's important. We need to have a look at what matters to us, make those agreements up front. My last relationship, my boyfriend dominant was one way when we started. Then when he had me, he didn't have to do those things or be that way. Now I understand as to why I started to not trust him as time went by. What you'll find in a lot of power exchange relationships is that they don't last. So if you want a power exchange relationship and all of a sudden you're in one and you're doing something slightly kinky, give it 2 years and the kink is gone. For a lot of people, a lot of the time. I would love to do some kind of PhD on that. Why does it disappear? What happens? And it's the same with behaviors. Yeah, no, I'm really good. I do that. And that happens for a while. And when the person feels safe and I've got them, that makes a real difference as well. Andy says, yeah, a lot of us when we are kids default to saying no when they've spilt bubble bath all over the carpet and ask if they did it, just mentioning for a friend. I like that video. Have you seen the one on YouTube where she says, honey, have you eaten the blue sprinkles? And she's like, no, mom, I haven't eaten the blue sprinkles. And she's like, honey, come here. Have you eaten the blue sprinkles? And there's this whole tube of blue sprinkles, like food sprinkles completely gone. He says, no, mommy. And his mouth is utterly covered in them. Or you see the kids that are drawn over each other. We naturally say no because we're scared of the consequence. And because we're scared of the consequence, what we're not willing to do there is to be vulnerable. And if we're not willing to be vulnerable, trust becomes an issue, especially if you want multiple relationships. If you want polyamory and you're not monogamous or any of those things, you have to learn about vulnerability. Our daily interactions require vulnerability. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're not going to open up to the risk of being hurt, then you're in trouble. I remember when I moved out of my last house before this one, this beautiful old 15th century house, and I was sitting in an inglenook fireplace in the kitchen and I'd just broken up with somebody, and my youngest said to me, Mummy, that's enough now. And I said, what do you mean, sweetheart? And she said, she was about 9 at the time, and she said, this relationship stuff, just don't do it anymore. She was really interesting. It's really interesting watching her philosophies now as well when it comes to relationships. And I said, oh, Erin, no, definitely not. We have to take a risk, even if we do get hurt. And she said, I know, but we're going to have to move and everything. And I went, yeah, we are. And that's okay. That's really okay. And it is okay because we do manage and we can do those things. We have to be willing to take a risk. So trust is developed when our partner has a chance to hurt us and actually doesn't, or has an opportunity to do something that they shouldn't. I shouldn't admit that I watch Love Island. I absolutely do because I love reality TV. And watching, so 4 new people came to the villa last night. If you don't know what Love Island is, it's a reality TV program where the whole idea is you put people in very sexual, open situations. They're all very classically beautiful, whatever that means, fucking hell. And the idea is that they're tempted to cheat on each other and find other people. But the idea is that they find love. And then they win some money as well. And do you know what? Some of these youngsters make like millions out of these sort of things. So good on them. And I respect them for that. And that's fine. John says that sums it up perfectly. Will you be truthful when it isn't in your interest? Yes. And that's a really important part of it. I love First Dates, great reality. Basically Big Brother with butts, loads of butts and some very nice butts. I mean, let's be serious. There are some very beautiful people in there. So, and 4 new people came into the villa last night. And one of the people in there is particularly insecure. And her immediate response was, oh God, they're all going to go for him and it's going to be awful, isn't it? Whereas actually what I would be saying is, this is interesting. If he decides to do that, then he decides to do that. At least he's shown me who he is and that's cool. And I can trust you to give me wonderful film recommendations and the terrible TV ones. That is so true. That's so true. That is so me. See that? What are best friends for? You see, trust. And it's really important to understand that actually that moment of insecurity is really fucking important, because if that's the time you're going to let me down, then that's the time that I know that I never should have trusted you in the first place. So that's the test in that moment. Not that we should go out to trust. Isabel says, taking risks is scary, especially after you've been hurt by someone you cared about. How can you trust again or allow yourself to trust again after that? It's a struggle. I'm going to come on to that in a bit, and we're going to look at that as well. So anything covers trust. But again, what I would answer to that slightly, Isabel, it's about trusting yourself. Because the truth is, we've all been through heartbreak. We've all been through terrible situations. We've had people die, maybe. We've had terrible things happen, and we survive. It's the trust about the survival of it that makes a real difference, that makes us feel better for that. So it's all about the reciprocity in the moment to ourselves and to the other person, mutuality. So what do we do? So when we have a breach of trust, if something's happened, do you find that, Debs, that classic sociological path play out on these programs? Yeah, don't they? Don't every time you watch something, doesn't everyone play out those classic stereotypes and those same situations that we're in every day? Because I tell you what I can trust is fucking human beings are really unreliable and do the opposite to what they're going to say. And sometimes human beings are really fucking reliable and do what we always thought they were going to do. That's one thing I can really trust a lot of the time. Memorable Meme says that I always feel the need to test people if they can be trusted. It doesn't feel okay to test them, but most of the time I was right and I shouldn't trust them. This makes my urge to test only bigger. Every single time, because you're going to put them in a situation that they might not normally be in. Like if you hire somebody to try and pick somebody up or do different things. I'm going to come on to that a little bit. So that's called a negative. And if we've got a negative rather than a neutral or neutral positive, we set up for failure all the time. And there's so much research around that. So we're going to cover that again. So a breach of trust, like Isabella started to say, what's that about? It's a loss of power. It's a loss of value. And Lady Lid says, I hate when I ask someone something I already know the truth about and they lie. Do you know, why do you hate it? Because nearly every single person on the planet is going to lie once or twice to try and cover themselves. I remember quite a few months ago, I caught someone doing something. I can't remember what it was. It was next to nothing really. Oh yes, I know. They'd sent me a photograph in the middle of the night, said, oh, this is the new house I'm looking at. And I said, is it? I mean, yeah, what do you think? That's my new bedroom. And I said, but it isn't, is it? And they said, no, but it really is. And I said, we're in a sticky situation. I know that's not the truth. I can prove it's not the truth. What I would really prefer is that you just tell me. You're being ridiculous. What do you mean? Okay, here's the reverse image search. That's one of your properties in Birmingham that you let to students. That's not true. And it's like, Jesus, you're a bit of a sleuth. How did you find that out? Because you're obviously lying. And there are many ways we can catch people lying. So if we do want to know the truth, it's really difficult. John says, you don't learn to trust others. You build and learn to trust yourself. I would really agree with that. Then you can handle what the other person does. And that is, I will be okay. We often think that we should break up with someone that breaks our trust, but that's not always necessarily true either. It's not always a reason to give up on a relationship. But rebuilding trust is really complex and difficult, and it's a lot harder. And then a lot of people say, but you did this to me. And they did. And that's really difficult. But we have to turn around and look at respect and work out how we're going to rebuild that relationship in some way, shape or form. That's complex too. People have to take responsibility for their actions. When we say, sorry, I'm sorry that happened. You know, I was just in a bad place. That's not a good enough apology. It's not a good enough reason. We have to be able to start to dissect and work it through. But once we've done the dissecting and working through, what's really important, which is what most people go wrong with, especially after trust is broken, is it's brought up again and again and again and again. If somebody has broken your trust, you sort it, you get all the answers you want, and then you never bring it up again. You have to decide to have a new relationship. You have to think differently, but that's complex, and we'll go on to that a little bit. People need to process what happened and work out what it means to them. So it's really difficult. The truth at the end of the day is you can never rely on somebody 100%. Can you 100%? Has anybody found more than one person in their life, 1, 2, 3, that they can rely on 100% no matter what? Would someone really drop everything? Can someone? Would somebody give you money? Would somebody give you time? Would somebody come to the hospital? Would somebody help out? Or at some point, do they let that down in some way, shape or form? So the only person we can trust, which has been said, is ourselves. We can be trusting. Only my mum, who loves me unconditionally. See, that's interesting, isn't it? I bet you've never tested those conditions fully. I'm not disagreeing, Lady Lilith. I'm not trying to ruin your relationship. Fucking hell. You know, can you imagine? Actually, mum, it's not that. Everyone has a condition eventually. If I were to murder my sister, I think my mum would have a real problem with our relationship. I mean, she's dead. It doesn't count. But it's complex, isn't it? Everyone has a limit on how much they will be pushed and what they can be trusted on. That's the difference. I've done most of these things and felt let down afterwards because the person I did them for didn't reciprocate with the trust. And that's another thing. There you go, Jerry. That's about the expectation. I do all these things. Why don't you? I wrote a piece again on FetLife quite a while ago called I Can. I'm somebody who can. I do. I'm really functional. I've got a lot of energy. I get on with things. There are a lot of things I can do. Why can't you? Because the person is different to you. Different. And not all of us can, and not all of us have worked through those things. So the expectations we have are a problem. Cosmopolite says, I think people often think of trust as 100% or naught when that's not actually reality. 100%. And that is so what I'm saying. It is a spectrum. It is a continuad. And a continuum. That's a new word. Let's make it up. So it's never at 100% the whole time, because there are always times when we pull back for different reasons at different times. Memorable Meme says, I love what you're saying about working it through with someone, but what if someone has broken your trust more than one time? When is it enough? And the answer to that is when you say it is. Look, there are many times that we'll go back to someone and on some level we know, but it takes a person an average of 2 years to think about leaving someone else. And also it's about understanding your own values and your own worth. Somebody, I've got things written on me, especially in Hebrew, because, you know, that's my heritage. That's where I am. And that's what matters to me. But one of them, it's really important. It says, what you allow will continue. If you allow, I think people make mistakes and somebody always deserves a chance. But how many chances do they need? At what point do we say, no, that's enough. I have the respect for myself here. And that's too much. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe once said, that's quite a handful, isn't it, of a name? As soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. So as soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. I trust and respect myself. It's a really important concept. You might cheat on me. I might give you another chance, but I probably won't give you a second. And I know that I won't give you that second. How many times do we keep giving someone a chance? I mean, there is that old saying of like once, twice, thrice. 3 times, you know, more for you, more for me. Jesus Christ, at what point do we turn and say, no, fucking hell, that is enough. I'm not doing that anymore. And I think it's important. And Ruby Red says, I'm not sure I'd want to be loved unconditionally. Is it weird? No, I think there have to be conditions. If somebody loves you, no matter what you do to them, you're walking all over them. You've lost respect for them. That's not good. That's not good as a human being. That's not caring for somebody else anymore. There comes a point where, no, of course, conditions matter. I want my partner to have conditions around my love for them, around my care for them. Unconditional can happen to a certain extent with children. Even then, rare, fully, when it gets down to it. I think context matters. People often forget about context, what someone lied about or how they broke your trust matters. Yeah, or when and what had happened before and what was going on in their lives. There are a lot of things that matter. So context really does matter. Separate things. I don't know how you will feel about that. I think that's a really important part of that. I love you and you're being a dick and I don't want to be with you because it's not right. So we have to have faith in ourselves that we'll make it through challenging situations rather than, and be kind to ourselves. Like that question earlier about at what point do we turn and say it's enough? Well, at what point are we going to honor ourselves, respect ourselves and think about that? And John says, I think sometimes people lie because they don't trust our reaction. Sometimes that's us. Sometimes it's someone before us. Yep. So a lot of stuff comes from fear where we turn around and we're not sure about things. So we have to be aware, don't we? I'm a really big believer in sharing paranoid fantasy. Brené Brown calls it the story. Different people call it different things. I really want to share this with you and I'm scared. I have this conception or this idea that you might respond like this because people have before. Or in my experience, this is what people do. Or in my experience, this is what you've done. I still want to share it. Can I? Yeah, please go ahead. And this is what I would like from it. So, and also we have to watch blame. You fucking said it again. You did this, you did that, you fucking did that. And we blame and we put someone in a corner. And when someone's in a corner, they'll come out fighting. And then we wonder why it doesn't go well. Instead of owning our own shit, a neutral instead of a negative, saying, when you did that, this was my response to it. And I understand that's my shit and it's getting in the way. And I'm really struggling with that. And my idea is that you might do this or this will happen. Jesus, I don't want to feel that way. Can we talk about it, please? So that's really important as well. Understanding. So we have to nurture ourselves and our thoughts, but we also have to think about the consequences on other people. The world is very set on love yourself, trust yourself, have your emotions, entitlement. You're entitled to this, you're entitled to that. There's a lot of that going around at the moment. However, being entitled to your emotions doesn't make you entitled to act like a fucking prick or act like a nasty person or do terrible things. And a lot of us are lost in that. We also have to really watch what people do around us so they don't undermine our self-trust. We talk about gaslighting a lot at the moment. That's really trendy. People don't understand when they use the word gaslighting. That's, you know, it's really overused in the wrong context nowadays. It's really important that you believe yourself and that when you know you're right, but also to be open to be being wrong and not to be convinced that you're mad. Cinder says, yeah, boundaries and when you maintain them can cause other friction between people. My father is becoming increasingly toxic to be around lately, so I've had to back off a bit for my own good, not his. I could continue to try and mend the relationship, but it would be at my expense. It all goes back to knowing yourself and what you are willing to permit. Exactly. It's also understanding that people are damaged. People are damaged goods. We're born diamonds with huge fractures. We're still sparkly and shiny, but we have flaws. The idea, beauty isn't in our perfection. Beauty is in our imperfection. And we have to accept people, but we also have to understand our boundaries at some point and say, I'm not willing to do that. That's a bit too much. So Cosmopolite, I think what John is saying there is talking about projection. So in my experience, people have always done this when I said this. So that's what I expect from you. But actually, I'm not going to do that. So please don't put that expectation on me. So what we're doing is we're saying that in my experience, this has always happened. I expect you to do this. But actually, that's not necessarily true. So I think we have to take different people, newly, all the time and say, right. And it's really hard to leave like your shit behind because we tend to bring it all with us, our baggage. That's what baggage is about. Same with narc language. And again, actually, Cosmopolite, that's another thing I'm going to say. Narcissism, fuck me, that's an overused term. Most people are not narcissistic. They have narcissistic tendencies. We all do. We all look after ourselves. If I meet one more bloke who says my ex is a fucking psycho, or I meet one more woman who turns around and says my ex is a narcissist, Jesus Christ, there must be billions of them. And it's just not true. So again, like what you're saying, it's such an issue. Narc behavior, narcissistic behavior. They've got this wrong. They've got that wrong. Fucking hell. I've paid 200 grand to become qualified. You read Google and you know your ex is a narcissist. It's incredible. Congratulations, because I can't fucking do that. And I don't trust that your experience is relevant to that. Because as somebody said earlier, the experience we have with somebody is our personal experience and we take it personally rather than somebody turning around and saying, actually, that's not true. These are the facts. I understand that you're hurt, but we come from a very hurt perspective. Andy says, it's interesting you've made that statement that your mum said. It's a bit in reverse with me and my mum. I suppose I love her. Blood is thicker than water. She brought me into the world, but I couldn't really say I like her and haven't done for a long time. It goes way back to an upbringing of a home like with not a lot of affection or nurturing, I think. Yeah. And, you know, interesting as well, it's our parents, our grandparents are product of their upbringing. And at some point, we have to make a choice to stop it or change things. We can't change people from that perspective. And older people will definitely not want to change. That's a more modern way of thinking. People from my age downwards are more willing to change. And I'm 57. A lot of people of my age aren't willing to change. Preach, you are on fire tonight. So good. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Bam, going for it. Cinder says, oh, agreed. My dad and I have both been through a lot of traumatic experiences, but he's stuck in 1988 and expects me to be too. I've offered to go to therapy with him, but he doesn't want to move on. And that's okay. That's not what he wants to do. I'm just not saying it's a place. Yes. And do you know what, Cinders? I fucking admire you for that. I admire you for that because you've got the capacity to turn around and say, he can't, I want to, I'm not willing to go there. I'm willing to have some form of relationship, but I'm not willing to be there or stay stuck there. You've got to remember as well, when people have trauma and they have things happen to them, when I'm dealing with somebody who comes into my therapy room, they tend to trust me immediately, which is fucking stupid. Why trust someone? I'm about to play with your head. Fucking hell. Take some time, get to know me a little bit first. That person's often stuck in a childlike state if they've had some kind of trauma or something's happened to them. So we need to know someone's history a little bit, their stories. That makes a difference too. So we've got to look after ourselves. One of the most important things that's really, really good to think about is boundaries. So boundaries come into trust. If I can hold a boundary and say, no, that isn't okay by me, or that is, and I'm willing to be flexible on some boundaries and I'm willing to move on Some, or I'm willing to hold others. That also shows trust. That makes a real important thing. Ruby says, brilliantly well done as well, Cinders. And Cinder says, Andy, do you know where the phrase blood is thicker than water comes from? It is apparently from the battlefield, and it's about how the bonds made you more stronger than the water from your family or heritage. It's how we bleed for each other. Are we willing to bleed for each other? How far are we willing to go? Can I trust you to have my back when it really counts? But there again, I would argue that the army and all forms of services teach people to do that in a slightly different way. You have to get a point and live for yourself first and foremost. You have to, the most important you need to commit to, first of all, is yourself. To trust yourself, to live. What are your boundaries? What is it you want to do? We're very good at being our own critics. We're very good at having a go at ourselves. How do relationship attachment styles affect trust? Hugely. I'm going to come on to that. I've got a whole writing on FetLife as well that talks about, so we basically, there are many forms of attachment styles and attachment patterns. Again, I would really go back to my writing on attachment on FetLife. I can't remember what I've called it. I think I put it down earlier. Attachment and adult relationships. Hang on, I'll send you a link to it so you can have a read of it, because it's a lot easier.
I'll see if I can find it for you, Deb.
I've got it. I'm really organised tonight. I've thought about all the things that might be needed there, my lovely. So I've thought of that. Hang on, I'm just going to try and send this. Oh, it's only let me, everyone in meeting. So this is a writing on attachment styles and patterns. I'm only basically covering 3 or 4 attachment styles. There are arguments that there are hundreds now, and there are. There's the link. So part of what we've got to understand is that we have an insecure or a secure attachment. And under insecure, there are various forms of attachment that we have, depending on how we brought up and what that means to us. If we have an insecure attachment, we don't trust ourselves and we don't trust others. Around 52% of people have an insecure attachment. Around 48% have a secure attachment. So there are more people with an insecure attachment than there are with secure. Now, you might not even believe in attachment theory, discovered by Bowlby and Ainsworth, but actually, if you do go back, it's built on quite a really good principles. It's not the answer, it's not the be all and end all, but it is part of a solution and part of a problem. So we have to understand that people aren't always reliable. Our most important attachment is to ourselves. I can trust myself. I love myself. These are my boundaries. And your boundaries also coming around, are you going to go to bed early? Are you going to look after yourself? Are you going to have a shower? Are you going to eat? Are you going to maybe go to the gym? And if you don't want to go to the gym, you're just going to go for a walk. Are you going to make sure you're hydrated? Are you just going to drink shit all day that's not so good for you? What are you going to do to look after yourself? I took 2 days off last week. Anyone who knows me knows I never take time off work. That is not my style. But I felt so ill. I was like, fuck this. I was on 2nd course of antibiotics, steroids, everything. Like, screw this. I'm just going to stop. And you have to look after yourself. And that inner critic that you've developed is really harsh on yourself sometimes. And one of the little tactics I use, one of the little things I use is that if you have a photo of yourself as a very young child, down at my phone for a second, I'm just going to pick up a photo that's very from me when I was like 5 or 6, right? So perverts here, you're going to have a great time right now. Sorry about that. So like this, can you see that? I can't even see if you can see that. Can you see that? That's a photo of me when I was little, because I can't see the reflection, so I'm not sure if you can. So that's me when I'm about 5, I think, 5 or 6. And people are, as human beings, we are not linear. We don't leave behind what was. We are like tree rings. We grow, and that's part of us. If you are a cunt to somebody or yourself, you are being a cunt to that child. It's not healthy. So sometimes I look at that photograph and say, if I wouldn't say it to her, I'm not going to say it to myself. I have to develop trust for myself that I'm not going to be horrible, because we are really horrible to ourselves. Good, drink, carrots, it's really important. It's really important that we look after ourselves. So as I say, when I look at her, as I say, it's quite difficult for you to see, but that's myself and my sister when we're really, really little. Let's not talk about the fact that we're dressed identically. Fuck no, let's not talk about Jewish mothers, for Christ's sake. So we have to be really careful about, if I'm not going to say that to myself, you know, why would I say, oh God, look after yourself? Yes, you can still access the link. I'm willing to bet that diagnoses like PTSD and complex PTSD would decrease your window of tolerance, making someone more sensitive to trust, distrust. Am I right in that line of thinking? Right. So if you have like PTSD or complex PTSD and anorexia, those are the 3 things, the mental illnesses that will change your brain structure as it goes. PTSD doesn't necessarily change your trust, but it does change your capacity to deal with the consequences of trust and what's going to happen, because you can't maybe manage the feelings and all those excessive things that come up for us and that happen. So that's one of the differences. However, PTSD can definitely be worked with, as can complex PTSD. A window of tolerance is what we can manage in our lives. If I can manage this much, and the idea with anything is that we try and increase that window so we can manage more and we start to feel a bit better. That makes a difference as well. But going back to this whole critic stuff, please be kind to yourself. Instead of saying, I've used this story before, I burnt some bread quite a while ago, I think when Erin was about 15, and I went, oh, for fuck's sake, Deb, you idiot. And she turned around and she said to me, she was sitting at the table, and she said, really, mother, is that any way a therapist should speak to herself? And I went, oh, fuck off, Erin. And we had a bit of a laugh about it. And she's right, though. I'm not stupid. I've got fucking letters coming after my name. I've got, you know, I've got an MSc, I've got an MBA, I've got a fucking normal degree, I've got 8 postgrad or 7.5 postgraduates, fuck you, cancer. Like, so I've got all these different things that have happened, right? And I've got letters after my name that says I'm pretty clever. But I just call myself a fucking idiot because I burnt some bread. Jesus Christ, we need to look at how we speak to ourselves as well. So self-trust is nurtured through us connecting to our own emotional well-being and paying attention to how we disturb that and how we impact that. And that's really important. Check in, look at yourself. There are arguments that Erickson has a trust and mistrust theory around psychosocial development. That's another thing that we can talk about as well. So that infants learn to trust their caregivers because their basic needs are met. And we talk about that. We talk about that. You need to write a biography, Debs. Oh, don't go there. I've got the living book to do first. And this weekend, Poppy and I are talking about our weekend this weekend. That's what we're doing as well. So we have to look at that somebody will get our basic needs met, but they need to be met good enough. And that's really important because people can't guess people. Parents are stressed. People are stressed. We need to get a basic thing right for our kids that's good enough rather than too much or too little. And that's really fundamental as well. So if our basic needs are met, as human beings, we'll start to feel better. So we need to trust that somebody will get us. If they're not consistently met in a good enough way, we will start to mistrust, we will start to become anxious, and we will start to be suspicious of human beings. And that's at a very young age. That makes a real difference. So when we talk about polyamory and we start to talk about different relationships, doesn't matter whether it's DS, anything else as well. What's really important is that we have to understand that poly will only amplify mistrust. BDSM will only amplify mistrust. These things will make a huge difference. So you have to learn to understand that if you mistrust, the more things you do, the more times they're amplified, and that makes a difference. So it's really important. We have to work through what are my insecurities, what are your insecurities, and how will they rub up the wrong way? Because if two people have bruises, when those bruises start to hit, that's when it hurts. So we have to understand what our own bruises are and have a look at it. It's not about blaming. It's not about shaming. It's about understanding. It's about really getting that and understanding. If you don't know what you're apologizing for, why the fuck are you apologizing? I'm sorry. Yeah, but what for? Well, I don't know. You're upset. We've got a problem then, haven't we? If you can't understand why I'm upset, you can't understand what's going on, or I can't do that, then that makes a difference. I went to see Where the Crawdads Sing last week. Fucking, was it this week? Tuesday. I bloody loved it as a film. I like it as a book. It's a fucking brilliant film. I absolutely loved it. See, like Poppy trusts my advice around films, just not around TV. It was a bloody brilliant film. And part of it was, I'm not going to ruin the story for any of you, because if you know the story, you know the story, so don't ruin it for anyone. But part of it was talking about the misconception that people have of this girl as the Marsh girl, that she's weird, that she's alternative. And in a court case, he says, don't judge her on what you think you know about her. Judge her not because of that sensitivity. And that makes real sense to me when you really think about that. It's a great book, isn't it? But the film is fucking beautiful. It's so brilliantly done. The little girl that's in it is just, oh, I cried so many times. Debs, where do you think we get the sense from people when we may only meet someone a couple of times and we'll say, I don't trust him, her? Is there something where you sense some kind of energy, or am I just talking crap? Nope, that's called projection. So what that is about your guts. You have met that person before. On some level, you know, but you've got to learn to trust your own guts. But, you know, red, love heart, we look for red flags. How can you see red in red? So you have to look for texture. You have to look for nuance. You have to look for a feeling. And for each and everything that happens, we really, really have to look into that. I'm going to do this. What's the film's name? Where the Crawdads Sing. It's also a book. It's one of the best-selling books of all time, actually. A woman wrote it in her 70s. I can't remember her name, but it's a wonderful film as well. It's just coming out. So we have to learn to understand. Now, polyvagal theory and polyvagal systems, the vagus nerve is also really important as well, because it connects everything. But we're not very in tune with ourselves. We're not very good at that. But you can do things to improve being in tune with yourself and understanding. But what we have to also say is some of my mistrust can be founded or unfounded, bearing in mind who I've been with and what's happened before. I've often wondered if some of the stuff we trust as guts could also be bias. Yes, of course it can, because our guts can also be slightly wrong. So what we have to be around our guts is curious. I'm curious about that. That's telling me something. I'm not going to take it as fact. I'm not going to take it as absolute. I'm not going to take it as nothing, but it is telling me something. So I'm just going to be curious about that. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to look around that and see what happens here. And that's really, really important. If we just apologize and we don't understand why, or we're saying stuff and we don't understand why, and things aren't going well and we don't understand why, you know, it might be that, hey, people were shit to us at school when we were little. It might be that our parents didn't get things right for us. So that can come into it. Maybe we've got some kind of rejection sensitivity or some kind of trauma or something's happened. So again, fucking go and sort your head out. Go to therapy. Go and understand how some of this stuff gets in your way so you can learn to trust yourself. It really is important. So if we then project and say, this is how it's going to be, this is what people will do to me, this is how things are, that's when we start to go wrong. And that's when we start to put those guts in the way when they're slightly biased rather than positive. So sometimes what we've got to be is just curious about your guts. My gut instinct says I'm not so sure about that person, but I'm still going to give them a bit of time. I'm not so sure. What do you think? What are your thoughts? It's really important. So an apology, if you do behave badly, is not an excuse. It's not an explanation. It's not a justification. You need to turn around and admit what you did wrong or badly. And you need to listen about what the other person needs, about the impact of your actions so that they can trust you again. It's about intention. You might not meant to have hurt somebody, but however you did. So we have to take responsibility for our actions in order to improve trust as well. That makes a real difference. If you want to get things back to build and maintain trust, honestly, if you want to read, yes, so often I'm sorry is inadequate. It completely is. If you really want to understand about trust, I would really recommend any day The Science of Trust. I really would, by Gottman, as I said earlier. What he shows in the book, what he goes out to prove is that trust can be reliably measured scientifically, and that he looks at the science of game theory as well. So that's important. He does that. He also has a look at neutral and negative conflict interaction, and people who are stuck in a negative when they never see the positive and they don't see their part in it and they don't move forward is almost a definite precursor for divorce, for breakups, for everything else as well. And he talks about the apocalypse, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to relationships as well. So he's a really good person and his theories are really good. If you want to learn how to be in a relationship, read any of Gottman's stuff. And because if you've got an unhappy couple who are just so involved in a negative experience and they get lost, the book is called The Science of Trust by Gottman. I think it's called Emotional Attunement for Couples. I think that's the second half of it, but it's The Science of Trust is the first part of it. He also says that when we get into a very low trust state, what he proves as well is that we flood our system, and that's where the vagus nerve theory and the vagal nerve theory starts to come in. We set off our sympathetic nervous system and we have such an interesting response of fear and everything else as well that we can't be present in relationship, and it starts to cause us more and more troubles. So that's not good for us either. There's a physiological connection between slower blood flow and the sympathetic nervous system to the heart around trust. When we are in a trusting relationship, do you know we are less likely to have a heart attack and less likely to have high blood pressure? A trusting relationship, he's done lots of tests on this, make us feel better. It improves our health and our well-being. Isn't that crazy? That's mad, isn't it? That can have that much impact on us. But we also know from childhood, like if we have adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, that ACEs can cause a serious problem as well. And actually that impacts our physiological well-being later around heart, obesity and all sorts of things as well. So if we're in a trusting relationship and we're good, we are less likely to have health problems. Mad. Also, if he can also show when looking at trust, how we predict how people are going to do and what's going to happen about their death. And this is crazy. Read this book. It's mental. About their death and their how someone is going to be and whether they're going to last or not. And one of the things he really believes in strongly, and he looks about all the time, is that that one of the things we have to be really careful around. Thanks for the links. Yep. Oh yes, I ranked in far too high VAC, so that's been a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. Yes, and it doesn't mean it can't be fixed, sorted, or helped. But what he talks about as well is the sound relationship house. The Gottman theory talks about the sound relationship house. And part of the structure of that down each side is trust and commitment. So trust and commitment come into it, and then we build up our relationship. So we need emotional intelligence to build a really decent relationship if you want a good one. And one of the ways we have to do that, one of the ways we have to start talking about is one of the first builders is something called love maps. When we talk about therapy, I have a slightly different approach to a lot of therapists, and I do a lot of sharing and articulation. I believe that trauma has been created in a one-sided relationship, so I make the relationship a lot more two-sided, so there's less chance there. That's something I give because I'm also building a love map with my clients. And that means sharing information about both of us. So I bring that into trauma therapy as well, which is a slightly different approach to a lot of different people. We need to be able to say a little bit about our partners or a little bit about our people, and they need to be able to say stuff about us because trust is part of that sharing. That's what really matters. So if you want to build a love map and you want to start to look into it, and it's something you want to do with anybody, I would definitely have a look. Have a look at love maps, have a look at Gottman again, and that's something we can really get into. He's also got a really interesting piece on the end. I haven't looked at it relatively to BDSM yet, but he talks about power relationships. When power is tilted in the favor of one person in the relationship hugely, and that power is, I mean, he hasn't got anything on consent. I'd be really interested in talking to him about this, but especially if the man is the one with all the power and the woman's the one with less power, if we have a monogamous and we have probably a cis-het couple, heterosexual, actually that's also a precursor for doom and gloom in most relationships when the power imbalance is there so much that actually trust doesn't happen and it doesn't work long term. So I'm really curious about that. I want to see where that would ever go if he ever did that. So, and it might be that different things create different trust. When I'm working with couples, it's really important that I find their history out. And the way they say their history, or polycules or different people, the way people tell their history and the way they say things is also a precursor as to whether their relationship will last or not. Whether they focus on the positive, oh my God, you remember you did that, and then we met like this, and those things that we speak about. Sorry, missed a few minutes as multitasking. Bloody woman. Read polyvagal theory. The survive, thrive spiral is a good image and a simple way of understanding emotional regulation, flow, and staying in the I can and am space, which is what Debs is advocating so much throughout this workshop. And that's about trusting yourself. And a lot of the time when we get lost in that spin, if you find yourself going off and you're not feeling very good, if you want to improve your connection, let's talk about polyvagal theory for a minute, which can help you trust yourself. Massage behind your ears here, that very soft bit there. These 2 points, not too much, not too hard, but just to massage can really make a difference. And that helps your vagus nerve and the flow. Hum, sing, do those things, hum and sing. It's really important. You can massage your feet and pressure points. That helps polyvagal theory. It helps us stay present. And the other thing you can do that helps us stay very present is to take freezing cold water. Please not if you have some kind of rosacea or something else as well, and just plunge your face in it. Freezing cold. Connect, be present. Right, fucking hell, right, I was gone. Let me come back. It's really important to stay present rather than get lost and go somewhere else. So it's really important that we promise what we say, that we stick to things, that we don't use and we don't weaponize a lot of the experiences that we've had with others and weaponize the experience that we've had with that person. And it's really good to sometimes try and say, I know you lied to me last week, and right now I just really want to throw it in your face. So I'm really working hard not to. I'm sorry, that's not something I want to do. Just give me a second because I'm feeling pretty vindictive right now. At least admit how you feel. And that shows that I can trust you in order so that we can work in some way, shape or form together. If we are so hurt that we don't let trust build, then there's no point trying to have a relationship. You have to have some form of vulnerability in some way, shape or form. You have to take risk. But the problem is what people, especially in kink and in polyamory, we talk a lot about consent. And I think consent has gone too far. That's quite shocking. I know. People say, what the fuck are you talking about, Deb? Consent has gone too far. Consent has become the be all and end all. We talk about it as at the expense of every other healthy aspect of a relationship. You have to look at trust. You have to look at conversation. You have to look at different things. It's part of our foundation. It holds those sides of those walls up. It's important. And a lot of people, especially in power exchange relationships, turn around and say things along the lines of, but the top has to be the calm. The top has to do this. The top has to do this. Fuck off, you both do. Both people in a relationship have to be trustworthy. A toxic bottom is just as bad as a toxic top. Debs, what are your further thoughts on the power dynamic you just mentioned? Suppose you have a sub that first of all willingly submits, but what if that dynamic was in place 20 years ago? Possibly then the sub harbours wants and needs that may or may not be met. This could a power struggle develop. Yeah, of course it can. If a top stops stopping, oh, fucking hell, try and say that without drinking. If a top stops topping, Jesus, and a bottom stops, try it. It's not easy, I'll tell you. But if a top stops topping, and that's what's wanted in the relationship, the bottom isn't going to feel very good. I still want this. This isn't good for me. How do I get what I need here? That really matters. So we have to think about those things. It's important. If somebody turns around and says, you know, I want, what's ironic here, what makes me really sad about power exchange relationships and how long they last and what happens in a lot of them, they're so fixable and sortable by people doing the right things together, but a lot of people don't. So we really have to look at that. It's really important. A power struggle will develop if a person isn't feeling controlled, if they want control, and vice versa. So it's really important that we find that balance between those. So yes, of course it will still happen, but it's easily sorted. Easily sorted. You know, just, I need some space and time. You're driving me fucking mad. All you ever do is go on at me that you want me to top you. Well, do you know what? Have 20 texts ready, top them and say, when I come in, give me fucking half an hour, you worthless piece of shit, leave me alone. And you've just sorted all your problems. You've got the time and space you want. They feel utterly controlled and everything's okay. It's not as difficult as we make it, but the small things are important to do, to be seen to do, to carry those things on. A relationship isn't a one-time effort. When you clean your teeth, you don't clean your teeth once in life and stop. You have to carry on cleaning your teeth every day. It's the same with a relationship. It takes work every day. Chloe says, if you have an experience where you've been betrayed by your own instincts or trust with yourself is eroded, there is now self-doubt. Are there ways or steps to build it up again? Yes, just slowly, small things. I like this. Let me have this. This is a sandwich I love. Yeah, that's true. I really like it. Let's have it again. Do I like this piece of clothing when I put it on? Really start to listen to yourself. Do I actually want to wear this? I put a dress on a couple of weeks ago and I looked at it and I thought, I don't actually think I like this dress. I think I like it. I don't like it. I took it off. I put it in the charity bag and off it went straight away because I want to do what's right for me. So we have to find ourselves and do small things for ourselves to build it up. However, the other thing that comes into that, Chloe, is you have to look at what your values are and you have to go back to that writing around values. What are your values? And if to find out what your values are is really important in life. When you know what your values are, you can start to build up your trust in yourself as well. Because a lot of the time we're brought up to have trust in others because we should, to do things because we should, because that's the way things are. So we have to really look at what is it that I need? Do I want this? And especially when we look at kink and poly, do I want to do this? Is this what I want to do? Does this work for me? It's a really important question because a lot of people forget to ask that. So it's really important that we ask, is this right for me? And what does this mean? So we need honest conversations. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. that trust goes both ways, that it has to start with ourselves. It's at the core of what we do in kink. It's at the core of what we do in polyamory, because it's the core of what we do in all relationships. It's not about kink and polyamory. It's about a basic relationship with any other human being. And what does it mean? What is trust? And if you really want to learn a good TED talk to look at how to build trust in relationships, you take risks, look up Esther Perel and Mary Alice Miller. They do a lot of work together. Perel and Miller do a lot of stuff on how do you take risks? What do I have to do? And we have this subconscious calculation going on a lot of the time. What's the payoff? What if I get hurt here? What's going to happen here? Is it worth the risk? And we need to recognize red flags. That's very important. But we also need to see green flags. And I've got a writing on that as well. You might find, like, it, for example, if your last partner was an alcoholic and your current partner starts drinking, and you turn and say, well, you shouldn't drink too much. You're not really talking about that partner, are you? You're talking about the past. So we often get involved in situationships rather than relationships. And situationships are like, no, I'm re-experiencing trauma here, or I'm putting something in a situation, and it's not good for us. But if we're just looking for hypervigilance all the time, thank you, Jim, and we're just thinking it's just not healthy for us. Cosmopolite, what's that one? Yes, there's always that with clothes. You hang on to something because you once liked it, or it fit you 5 years ago as a height of fashion. I suppose some of those emotions can cross over into relationships. Yeah, they really can. Oh, thank you. That's the Esther Perel video. Great. So we have to take risks over time. We have to work with things, and we have to decide what we're going to do. So really good intimacy means some trade-off at some point between enhancing the relationship that I have with you and my self-protection. At some point, there has to be a trade-off. What am I willing to let go of here? What am I willing to meet you in? And that's really important. And that's that catch-22, isn't it? Can you take a risk without trust, or can you have trust without risk? What do we have to do? And you have to. But we're not talking about recklessness. We're not talking about idiocy. We're talking about calculated risks, understanding that I will be okay if I do this and how this works. It's important that we develop that. It does make a difference. There's also a lot of, our brains are pretty hardwired to actually trust other people. And it's why when mistrust happens or somebody betrays your trust, that short circuit makes it really difficult to trust again, because it's so fundamental to us. So when we do have trust, there's a really interesting piece of research in trust from 2015. Computational substrates, or something to do with trust. I can't remember. Sorry, it's all about social value and trust, but it's an August study in 2015. There are certain pathways in our brains that really matter. That how do we look at how we trust and what that means, and how does it impact our brains? So we're quite short-circuited on this when it comes to trust, the perception of trust, that friend, what it's going to be like. And we've got the ventral striatum that's really important. It's a key pathway in reward. It's a key pathway in positive emotions. And when we savor a positive emotion, that's a piece of research as well. And when we have trust, that really works well. So that sustained activation of that part of our brains really matters when it comes to trust. The other part that really matters as well in our neural processing and how we work as well, the medial prefrontal cortex. That again, review on Compet. Oh, thank you. Oh, look at all these people looking at all these things for me. It's amazing. There is a correlation between that, and that makes a difference as well. So that part, that medial prefrontal cortex around here, how we perceive somebody else, their emotional state and how they are, how we monitor, and how our decision making and how we go into our own memory really matters around trust as well. So that's a really important part of trust. Look, reciprocity might happen a lot of the time, but if we perceive someone as being more reciprocal, we'll experience 60 to 70% with that person, whereas compared we'll only do 50% with somebody else. So that part of the brain is really important, that medial prefrontal cortex. However, because trust is such a social construct, if you believe that I can trust that person, they're my cousin, you are more likely to trust them even though they fucking lie blatantly to your face, because we believe that we trust them. So that social connectivity also influences our trust. So we have to be very careful about that. It's really important. So It's built into our DNA to survive. That makes a real difference as well, which means we can override logic. That close friend is really hurting us compared to that new person who says, why the fuck are you doing that? It's so neurobiological to want to trust family, to want to trust people, that will look after us. So when we're betrayed, it's really hard to give the benefit of the doubt again. Oxytocin comes into this as well. There was another piece of research in 2008 that did a trust game. With the trust game, they introduced oxytocin nasal spray to see how people, what that would sort of placebo or the OT. So like the oxytocin nasal spray that was going in. And actually oxytocin increases your willingness to trust somebody. Now, oxytocin is your cuddle drug. I wouldn't trust my cousin as far as I could throw him. No, maybe not, but that's because of your experience. But we're more likely to, you might have somebody else in your family that you do. Maybe a cousin was a bad one, but you know what I mean. So those things really matter as well. So it's also really important that when they've looked at brain scans of how they trust people and what they do, like fMRI scans, the amygdala, which processes fear, which is also influenced by that, and some of that striatum in our brains as well, oxytocin affects our capacity to trust. And it's really related to that. So when we love someone, we're more likely to trust them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And that's quite hard to take, isn't it? That's quite hard to even think about. Should you trust someone just because you love them? Nah, that's quite a big deal, I think. So again, be really aware. The more we love someone, the more likely we are to trust them. So that comes into it. I would really have a look at Gottman's work. He talks about foundations. He talks about the building. So and I talk about a house as well, actually, very similarly, that you can change a lot of things, but the fundamentals of our homes are really important. When we first meet someone, we're starting to build a foundation. When it comes to a relationship, we've got to really dig it out, have a look, what's it going to look like, and put the structure in place. And then we start to put a frame up, which starts to make a pattern for us as far as our walls are concerned. And then we've got all the stuff that goes into it. It might be that, you know, we've got plumbing and electrics and water and all those bits and pieces. And then we start to then make walls, and we make more of a structure in our own homes. And new relationships do that, but it's the foundation that's really essential. And that's the connection. That's the friendship that we have with that person. And that's why it really, really matters. And it's lovely to make something look beautiful. Let's go straight in. Let's not do the work with the foundations. Let's just paint the walls and make them look pretty. You've got to start with yourself. It's really important with that structure. You've got to be aware. Often as well, when Gottman talks about trust, he talks about turning away or turning towards. When we trust someone, we tend to turn towards. We tend to try and say, what's going on for you? Help me understand. And we try and connect rather than saying, fucking hell, here you go again. You're doing it again. Could you say it again so I can write it down? So it's all about, someone's put a link in. Can someone put another link in for me? The Science of Trust by Gottman, if you can, if you've got one. Honestly, you don't even have to buy the book. Go to the Gottman Institute and read any of their stuff. It's a great set of stuff to read. It really does make a difference. So it's really important that we do that, so that we understand that trust is there. But turning towards somebody is really important. Non-defensive respond. And I posted earlier, there is also a free audiobook too on Amazon. Yeah, I've got the audiobook. I listen to it sometimes, and I've got it on Kindle as well. That helps too. So if you have somebody come in and they turn and say to you, I don't trust, it's all about tuning into what's really going on. What's happening here? What makes a difference? How can I say yes? So trust building is loads and loads of conversations that happen over time where we can connect with somebody different through. And I think Gottman talks about the intimate art of conversation, because it is intimate and it is an art. It is an art. We have to develop it. It's not something that just happens. It's something we have to build over time. And you have to look at your own attachment pattern. Therapy can help that. Look, people cheat, people lie, people have lots of reasons for doing things. They really do. And ever since relationships were invented, people cheat and people are shitty. People are horrible. We've had thousands, hundreds of thousands of years where actually men have had a license to cheat because women were property for many, many years. Then all of a sudden we're saying that monogamy is the way. Now we're saying actually monogamy isn't the way. Serial monogamy, like all these things have a huge impact on that. And there are antidotes. There are things you can do. So Each thing has a positive aspect as well. So if you want an antidote, you can get antidotes as well. Again, you can look at the Gottman Institute. It teaches you the antidotes that you can do. If you don't have to be critical. You can just gently talk. We don't have to say you did this. How do we know if it's them or us? You fucking know. 9 times out of 10, you know. That's about trusting yourself. Or it's about saying, do you know what? I don't know. Let's go for mediation and therapy because I don't even know who's right or who's wrong anymore. Go and see someone professional. It makes a real difference. So if we turn around and we attack someone and say, fucking hell, you're such a selfish prick. All you do is talk about yourself instead of saying, I'm really aware at the moment that I'm not in this conversation. I really need to talk about this. Please, can I share? So there are things that we can do. And there's some antidotes that Cindy's just given you. So we really need to change those things so it feels better for us. Take responsibility. Look at what you're doing. Soothe yourself and say to somebody, I need time. Can I come back on that? So have a look at those because they are really good techniques for us to use and they make a difference as well. Andy says, Deb, talking discovery of yourself. Sometimes I think, God, I'd love to just sit on a beach for 7 days, look out to sea and just think. Other times you think getting out and doing new things or adventure completely out of your comfort zone would be more productive. The truth is all of those things work. The truth is you don't need 7 days to do it. You just need a few minutes every day. The truth is we look for something that's really big to change our lives when it's already inside us and we need to learn to trust ourselves around that. And that's what's really important to do that, to manage it. If you feel committed to a partner and you know that that person will respect boundaries and you can be vulnerable together, it really matters. It's not about saying, my phone. It's not about giving someone an access to your password. It's not about social media accounts. It's not about your FetLife account. That's a load of bollocks. That's not trust. That's information. And in fact, often that shows a lack of trust. Because we can amend things, we can put things in places and have different accounts. It's about our capacity to be vulnerable with somebody. If you've been betrayed, you've got to look at the reason behind it. What was the lie here? What happened? Was it miscommunication? Was it a misunderstanding? What did I miss here? What have I done wrong? And then you have to be able to share how you feel about it. Not sure if I missed this, Cosmopolite says, but is it important to tell people how they've impacted you? Yes and no, Cosmopolite, because if we say, you did this to me, that again is having a go. It's very different to saying, when you, I feel I want. So when you did this, I'm really aware that my response to that was this. And I'm aware that actually that is my responsibility because the truth is it is. So when somebody does something, if they keep being a dick, of course, it's completely different. Yet we are in charge of our own emotions and our own emotional responses. I can't make you feel a certain way, but I might feel because of my expectations that things aren't okay. So that makes a difference too. So what you did had a huge impact on me. And I'm aware partially that's my stuff. It's also that, you know, this has had an impact. So can we talk about it? Because I don't want to feel this way. And that's what's really important. When you did that, I felt like this. I don't want to feel like that. Can we sort this? Can we get together on it? Can we, what you said made me feel this way because, no, we can't go with made me feel. What you said, I'm interesting. I had this as a response. I own my own response. Never made me feel because I can't make you feel anything. If Satine, let's say you've got a partnership and your partner, you break up with your partner. If you break up with me, it means nothing to me because I have no invested interest in it. So you can't make me feel. It's my own feelings that create a feeling as a response. You can't say you made me feel this way because that's not fair. And it's really unhealthy to do. What's important to do is divide between those two and to say, when you did that, what was interesting is I had this as a response. Fucking hell, I feel like really overwhelmed and I'm aware that it's my stuff and I'm aware that it's down to me. Can we please talk about it and work it through? Because I don't want to be in that situation again. Can I work it through with you? I've had someone take communicating when you, I feel I want as being passive aggressive. Tell them to go and see a decent therapist and sort their fucking lives out. That's not passive aggressive. That's just aggressive. Just go with that. Say, okay, tell me how else to be with you then. That's another thing I would say. What else would you expect me to do? What would you want from me? What would work for you? And let them talk. And often people say, when you do that, I feel like this and I want, isn't passive aggressive at all. It's stating something clearly. It's understanding and owning your own feelings as a response. And it depends how we communicate it. Well, you always do that, and I feel like that when you do it, that's still implying something, and that can be passive aggressive. So passive aggressive can come across in tone, can come across in body language and different things. It's also about being able to have a gentle conversation about it. That makes a difference. Also, just talking about people attacking other people in a defensive way, I found in my professional life that when the shit's hit the fan with a customer saying sorry and being honest diffuses the situation almost instantly. It's a lesson for personal life too. I am so sorry. I have fucked up. This is how I fucked up. I don't know what would be needed here. I'm not sure what is it you want from me. Sorry isn't enough sometimes. It just isn't, which we were saying earlier. You can take an apology languages test. You know, you can take the 4 languages of love, 4 languages, the language of love test. There's 5 like different languages of love. You can also do it for an apology. And that's really worth looking at as well. What's your apology system? How do you like to hear an apology? And does it need some kind of action, or doesn't it? Is it about words? So you can take an apology test as well. That can be really helpful for us as well. So we need to really look at somebody's sincerity. Oh, thank you, Cinders. What if you've had the explicit conversation and the other person goes and does exactly the thing you're not okay with? At that point, they are knowingly make a decision to hurt you. So how can there be trust after that? So my then conversation is, why are you staying? If you have said very clearly that this is a boundary for me and the other person goes over the boundary, you're right. How can there be trust? So we need to hold a boundary in that circumstance and say, that isn't okay by me. I'm really sorry, but I matter. My relationship with myself matters as much as my relationship with you here. And you're going against it. And I've said it once and I've said it twice. Ain't going to say it thrice. But that's really hard because we're so scared of change. We're so scared of breaking up and getting hurt and vulnerability. However, again, what you allow will continue. So actually, that isn't about trusting the other person after a while. That's about what you're willing to you're willing to put up with, and where you're willing to say, I'm going to draw the line. That isn't okay by me. Talking about it is just a beginning. Acting on it is really what matters. And we need to be able to forgive ourselves and forgive the other person. But if you can't forgive and you keep living in the past, then that's never going to work. If the person doesn't take it and doesn't change what they're doing, again, never going to work. It's really hard to let go of betrayal. But if you keep bringing it in and you have to trust your partner again, you're just going to have to build it like you did the first time round, and that takes time. And it's really hard. You have to look at what happened and why. That's really important for sure. And again, we have to understand the apology. But if that person is just knowingly making a decision to hurt you, why are you staying? That's my biggest one. And it helped me understand why someone didn't meet my needs when sneering went wrong. Sneering? Do you mean sneering? And also why my approach didn't meet their needs when something, I didn't think that. So sneering was pretty extreme. I was like, I think you mean sneering there, so thanks. People can't meet our needs. We have to look to ourselves. And that's why trust always comes back to us, me, I. When something goes wrong, it's about our expectations. And expectations are one of the biggest killers when it comes to relationships, because you have an expectation. I think you should meet my needs. I think you should do this for me, rather than saying, what can we do for each other? Where do we meet in the middle? And what do you need to do for yourself? Look, whether you like Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith is completely up to you. However, one of the philosophies I really agree with them on, and I don't agree with a lot of what they do sometimes, is that the other person isn't responsible for making you happy. You are responsible for making you happy. And then you come together as two people that do things that help each other and encourage. And sometimes things go wrong. You have to give your partner time. You have to be able to be with them, and you have to understand what their needs are and what your needs are. But you also have to understand how to fulfill your own needs, especially around trust. It's just about, right, we need to sit down. We need to understand this. And what you'll find is, especially if somebody's had an affair, often what will happen is, well, was she tighter than me? Was he bigger than me? Is he richer than me? Is he more intelligent than me? Is she prettier than me? Is she younger than me? And we ask these really weird questions that actually have nothing to do with it. And it isn't actually very productive. What they're after is avoidance there. So when we want closure, we're actually after avoidance, because it means we're not dealing with the pain. We're trying to deal with the facts and the answers that we think we need. Actually, go and see a therapist, go and see somebody, sit down with a couple therapy, and it can take a long time, and work through this, work through your values, work through what it is you want in life. It's difficult. If you have a long-standing pattern of infidelity or mistrust or anything else as well, it could take years to sort out. Absolutely years. What took years to create is broken in a moment, and it takes years to recreate again. So you have to renew. Is it worth it? It's not easy all the time. People will make mistakes. If people are good at it and own up to it and want to make change, then that can really be worth doing, but a lot of people won't do it. If you can work on trust issues, your relationship will probably get stronger. Debs, do you think because we live in a 24/7 society culture of achievement that it heightens people's expectations of each other? That's too much to expect? 100%. I absolutely do. And I think social media doesn't help. With social media, what we tend to do is look around and up. I want that. I want what that person's got. We never look around and down, really, to practice gratitude for what we've got and understand how much we've got compared to billions of people around us. So comparison is the enemy of communication and trust and everything else, as well as expectations are. So it's really damaging to do that sort of stuff. It's really important that we understand that actually we have too high expectations of other people and things. We think that things will buy us. You know, if we buy something, I'll feel better. If I eat something, I'll feel better. If I drink something, I'll feel better. If I gamble, if I wank, all of these things, it's not good. It's not good. It's not helpful. And if somebody continues to manipulate or deceive us, if somebody is insincere, and if their behavior doesn't match up with their words and their expectations are too great, sometimes it's time to throw in the towel. Walking away is just as important as staying. It's a commitment to yourself. And you don't have to do it alone. I mean, go to fucking couples therapy. Yes, and I suppose that boils down to trust in yourself and try to stay sane, yeah. And Master Jim says everyone on Facebook lives a perfect life. They do, don't they? Social media, well, okay, Cinder's about to say, it encourages us to do things that are advertised to us. So many of the posts by influencers are not even real. I work with a retouching agency, and the images an influence sending can be edited as shocking. Agreed. And the way we advertise, the way we sell, the things we do are not healthy. Cosmopolite, I wonder how much technology and social media and having millions of options for meeting people or partners influence things hugely. We have very high expectations of other human beings. We want a person to have everything for us. I really liked many years ago when Mark Zuckerberg was really active on Facebook. So I'm going back a long time. There was a grandma, I've mentioned this before. This person was talking about, fucking hell, I want to marry someone rich. Oh God, come on, women, let's do better. This woman say, I want to marry someone rich. That's my goal. Jesus Christ, make your own money. And what she did turn around and say, she tagged in, you want to marry the geek like Mark Zuckerberg. And Mark Zuckerberg actually wrote back, and he doesn't often. And he wrote back and said, no, be the geek, be your own geek. You don't have to marry one. Be that person yourself. We're all capable of that. Instead of just thinking that the world is going to provide. So again, I think we have to trust that the world doesn't give a shit about us. We often think the world's against us. The biggest thing you can trust is the world doesn't care. That's the biggest thing we have to understand, and that we're the people that care. The world isn't against you. It doesn't care enough to be against you. It doesn't give a shit. So you need to say, right, what do I need to do here to make a difference? So I think social media does. We are very disposable. You make one mistake and people just say, I'm done. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you strongly. We live in a disposable culture. Somebody makes a mistake or wrote something when they were 17 and it's come out on Twitter 30 years later and they're losing their job because of it. I would hate to turn around and say, if you heard everything I said when I was 15, 16 and 17. I'd like to think I was quite a nice kid, but I'm sure I wasn't in many respects. So it brings up really difficult things. It is possible to rebuild a relationship. It is possible to secure things after a breach of trust. It is possible to make things okay, but it depends on you. Are you willing to put the time in? Do you want to do those things? You might come out stronger. You know that whole kintsugi, when we're repairing gold or we restitch. I talk about when people go back over problems, it's like some people say, I'm not going forwards in my therapy, I'm just going backwards. And I go, great, we're just strengthening the fucking stitch. Every time we go back, we're putting more stitches in that seam, and we're going back and we're putting more stitches in, and eventually we do move forward. So it's whether you want that and whether that's important to you or not. That can make a huge difference as well. I know someone who gets all the, the latest research today has proven that instead of people turning to places like the BBC or everyone else as well, the majority of people are now getting their news, their actual factual news from TikTok. And that is dreadfully worrying to me because it ain't based on fact. It's based on opinion and you can't trust it. It is not a trustable source, and believes it all. And I tell them there are a lot of people on it for their own good. We're all on it for our own good to a certain extent. Cosmopolite says, I believe that's one of the problems with accountability in the kink scene, disposing of people. I know it's really horrific, isn't it, Cinders? And Andy, you saw that as well. But accountability is really important, isn't it? It's, if I share something and I know it's a fact, I'm going to tell you it's a fact. I'm going to tell you it's a piece of research. I'm going to tell you it's something I read. If I share something and it's my opinion, I'm going to tell you it's my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm right. It means I have a different opinion to you. That doesn't make someone trustworthy or right. It makes someone different. And that's one of the differences as well. We need to understand and trust that people have opinions and that's okay, but it doesn't mean that they are right. And that's really important as well. Anyone got a question on trust before I zip up for the evening? And I'll be back in a few weeks as well. So, I mean, honestly, I know I harp on about it, but go and see a really decent couples therapist if you've had really big problems. It is a big deal. It does make a difference. Find the person that's right for you. Andy says, throwaway society can unfortunately transpire to relationships too, unfortunately. Yeah, but also it is good a way to throw some things. Sometimes it's right to throw something away. We try too hard. When is the next one of these sessions? Oh, that's a good question. Let me just have a look. I'm just going to pick up my phone. Because I know that my daughter needs to use my Zoom. So I think it isn't in 2 weeks because they're using my Zoom. So the next one will be on the 11th, then it'll be every other week. So we'll do one on the 11th, then we go back to every other week because Brian and Andy are doing some big thing on one night where they want to nick my Zoom, and it happens because I was ill. And then I said, you can use it, but then I was ill, so now it clashed. So in 3 weeks' time. Oh, I'm really glad, Holly. I'm glad it's good for you. How can you evaluate trust in the early days of a relationship? Everyone is being their best selves. It's hard to know. Yep. So the answer is time. Give something time. We go too fast. We go too quick. We go in and we go, yeah. What we need to go in with is, yeah, look, I trust that you're going to do the best for you. I trust that you are presenting to me what you really mean in the world. However, you will show me within the next 6 months, because people will show you. That is one thing you can trust. Eventually, people will show you who they truly are. Don't expect things too fast. And you know, it's crazy, especially in BDSM and polyamory. I'm going to trust you to have condomless sex with me or put your fist inside me or beat me or hurt me, but I don't trust you to meet my mother. We are very fucked in the head when it comes to that sort of stuff. So we really have to start to look at that. You know, take your fucking time. If you want the hedonistic rush, then go with it, but go with it with a risk that's attached to it. Just because somebody hits you or hurts you or does these things, because that's got nothing to do with trust. That's about trust in the moment of the physicality. That's very different to actual trusting somebody with your life, your well-being, and the care. And that will show. So how to evaluate trust is, are they true to their word? Are they doing, what things are they saying? What contradiction is there? What are they actually doing? So time is your biggest friend when it comes to that, and small steps, small things. Watch how they deal with other people. Watch what they do. Just wanted to say this is one of the most thought-provoking workshops I've ever been to. Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. So I think I'm going for a slightly different tack. Let's really look at one subject, rip it to pieces, look at the science of it, and then have some Q's and A's on it. So that's what I'm going to, if you prefer this as a format, I think it might be better rather than trying to just lightly touch on 2 or 3. Agreed, Roy. Thank you. Debs, this has been super educational workshop. Absolutely loved it. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You're really welcome. Thank you very much. And Mia says, thank you. It's informative. Love this format. Okay, so we're going to go for this, I think, because I like it too. I agree. So as always, excellent. Thank you. People are saying lovely, lovely things. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Really love this format. It's been great. So I think we'll pick a subject and then we will really cover it in depth, look at the science, look at a few bits of research on it, look at some ideas around it, especially around relationships and mental health and different things. And then we just kind of play with it at the end towards it. This was my first and definitely not my last. Oh, thank you very much. And this is my first and I'll definitely be back. Thank you very much. We love you. I love you too. Thank you very much. Look, I don't ask for any money. If you want to donate to me through Ko-fi, K-O-F-I, and or through a few other places. I'm known as the Kink Shrink, so you can, and you don't have to. You are welcome just to come to these things for free as well. Kinky Smiley Kitty says, Roman Tully says, thank you too. I know my last relationship, my trust was broken, consistent breaking of the same boundary over and over again. However, I continue to look at my role and hold myself accountable. I do go on the defensive and criticize, but I'm working on it. Thank you for the reminders and information. Always feel empowered after these. I'm glad. Thank you. And Carl says, wonderful, thank you. Rejection sensitive. Yes, you asked for that, didn't you? I'm quite happy to do rejection sensitive dysphoria, but the problem, and I'm really happy to do that. And what people tend to do is rejection sensitive dysphoria is often part of something else, and it's overinflated as a thing in and of itself. That makes a difference as well. Send me the article if you want to, so I can have a look as well. Where do we go for the recording? Every time I put up a link on FetLife, underneath it I always put a link to it. It's on Lamb's YouTube. I am at Lamb on the 7th and 8th. I'm running a workshop there if you want to come and see me live. It's a Q&A session. I never know what questions are going to be asked. And recording, yeah, so once it goes up to London Alternative Markets YouTube, but I'm always linking. So where I put the workshop, the one underneath has got a link to it as well. So if you ever want to Patreon me or Ko-fi me, feel free. And if you don't want to, I don't care either. It's really nice. So yeah, so let's go with the one subject format and then we'll take it from there. So awesome. Thank you very much. Cosmopolite, feel free to send me that article. I can always exaggerate on it and see where we go. And then we'll pick a subject for next time. In 3 weeks' time. Thank you very much for your time. Nice to see you all. Take care. And I will see you soon. Wanker wave time, because we all look like a bunch of wankers when we do it. Take care. Nice to see you all. See you later.